Or maybe you've sensed it, that feeling that you're being watched. Well, the state has laws against stalking on the books, making it a felony.
I will put enmity between thee and the woman.
Cynthia Verbeff is moving. Her home, she says, has become a house of horrors.
I feel that I've lost my mind, I've lost my life.
And between thy seed and her seed.
Cameras record them going through intersections, zero in on their face.
It shall bruise thy head.
Virtually impossible to be able to tell that someone is being attacked because we cannot see these weapons that are being used against you. We can only see the direct effects. And these effects, really seem like symptoms.
God said, have you considered my servant Job? You wonder sometimes why Paul is attacked so much. Why do they assault him? Why is he the object of ridicule and scorn?
The phenomenon of gang stalking, the WTF.
There was a time when even Satanists followed me. They were trying to get me. The enemy was after my life.
Right now you may not be able to see the reason for your trials and troubles and tribulations and problems and sorrows.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
The signs of the zodiac, the constellations of the sky, which seem to be the same whether we go to Egyptian or Greek or Roman or Persian, Arabic, to Indian or Chinese, the same signs were held throughout the world.
The rapper was shot and killed in his car right outside of a Deerfield Beach motorcycle shop.
He drove to the stop sign, and then as soon as he got to the stop sign, about to make it right the street, literally a black van, a black Dodge, pulled up in front of him. Two dudes with masks and guns got out of the car.
Where did they come from? At the time of the building of the Tower of Babel, this was corrupted into astrology, whereby instead of these being signs of God,
the truck was parked. It was unmarked. No one was in uniforms. They did not identify themselves.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology.
The order of vital events in God's plan for this world, that man knows where he's at.
End of blood moon.
the sun and the moon and the planets and the stars.
Revelation 12 verse 7.
And they tried to sacrifice me. And they tried to sacrifice. I hate speaking on it.
There was war in heaven. There was war in heaven.
See, I am a victim of covert harassment and electronic harassment and gang stalking. I'm what's called a targeted individual.
Shattered paradise.
We are not ignorant of his devices. That old serpent called the devil and Satan.
Cynthia Verbeff is moving. Her home, she says, has become a house of horrors.
I feel that I've lost my mind, I've lost my life.
Incident reports from law enforcement tell the tale. Numerous break-ins at the address. Vandalism to her car, her motorcycle, her computer. Verbeff believes she's being targeted.
Everything. They just went through everything.
But sheriff's detectives had little to go on because the vandals, though often destructive, stole nothing. Even from her portable safe, drilled into and torn apart, the contents, the jewelry, remained untouched. Verbeff says her troubles didn't start until she met these two men. One would become her ex-boyfriend, the other was his partner in a San Antonio pain clinic, Dr. John Hall.
Very first time I met him, we went to his house on 4th of July, and he told me that because I was already there in his house, I would be the next victim, that I was going to be stalked.
Verbeff found the doctor's prophecy to be correct. She suffered months of oddness.
Coming in through the front door, and I touch the doorknob and it just falls into pieces.
Lights left on, doors open, furniture moved, her clothes dryer disassembled. Her friends say they noticed the strange happenings. They tell the I-Team they even witnessed a gas oven left turned on.
As soon as you walk in the house, you'd smell gas in the house. So the whole house smelled from gas. So immediately turned it off and opened up the doors. But I mean, that thing doesn't just turn on by itself. And it had been running for a good length of time.
Or the time Verbeff and a friend say they were stalked at a mall.
I saw him following us to several stores, and I would see the man close to us, looking at us.
The girls had the presence of mind to snap a photo with their phone. Verbeff says all these happenings culminated in an assault. The 39-year-old believes someone drugged the food in her home and returned later to rape her.
I know something happened to me because a woman knows.
She filed a report and was briefly hospitalized with signs of sexual assault. Dr. Hall says what Verbeff describes is known as gang stalking.
The 4G network responds to our commands in just under 50 milliseconds. With 5G, it will take around 1 millisecond, 400 times faster than a blink of the eye.
That they were indeed experimenting with, when I say experimenting, voice-to-skull, hive mind, behavior modification technology that is frequency-based.
Thanks to facial recognition, more than 20 million facial images are now held by the police.
If the police start deploying a technology without us understanding what it will do, and without any government framework, legislative framework, or independent oversight, then I think that will undermine trust in the police. Then you're perfectly right, there is this question about invasion of individual privacy. And there needs to be a proper balance between whatever the public interest has claimed and the interference in that individual privacy.
The deployment of the cameras is to test the technology and was implemented following close liaison with the Information Commissioner and Big Brother Watch.
Surveillance is obviously crucial to the police and intelligence agencies, and counter-terrorism makes it even more vital. What facial recognition allows, though, is the computer to pick your face out of a crowd. Rather than just being kept tabs on, you're tracked in real time. It's mass surveillance for the physical world.
Businesses are getting into it too. Adverts can be targeted at you in real time by detecting your gender, your age, and even your emotions. This is an unsettling future, one that so far the public has had little say over.
But basically, people are selected from all over the country. We're talking other cities all over America. They are selected for many different reasons. Often it is because they are isolated. But once these people are selected, they will have the entire gang stalking / voice-to-skull program run against them. But they will be organized stalk. They will have career sabotage programs run against them to ruin their job. They will have character assassinations campaigns. There is a precedent, I will say, that I'm aware of for hiring people that have displayed a certain moral ambiguity concerning certain issues. For example, within certain private security companies in the Seattle area, there are a lot of ex-LAPD. In fact, when the Rodney King riots went down and a lot of the scandals that went on in Los Angeles, the LAPD went through several stages of reform, and anybody from LA, of course, will remember this. And the people that were forced out of LAPD ended up almost exclusively going to work for private security companies. So you can imagine the types of characters that ended up in private security companies when the LAPD didn't want them anymore. Also, people that have criminal backgrounds are often coveted for gang stalking type of assignments. The reason for this is that they do not mind, obviously, mistreating other people, as many of the people freak out, understandably, when they at first don't know what it is. Oftentimes, they end up going to psychiatrists, be isolated from family and friends. Looking at the highest levels of this social engineering program, where scientists from all over the country and all over the world, they're looking at someone's genetics, they're looking at someone's cognitive abilities, they're looking at each individual fits the general profile that I'm describing. So they're highly intelligent, they are able to be isolated by whatever means. They normally have some sort of what I would describe as a free mind. They're people that aren't, part of the crowd, so to speak, in the way that they think. They're outsiders. They're what the government would call dissidents or revolutionaries, or people that may be a problem. That's a great question. I do not have direct knowledge of that personally in terms of an individual, how they are selected.
And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's hosts, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. And the king and princes loved him, and they elevated him high. And Terah took a wife with her name was Amethela, the daughter of Chronicle. And the wife of Terah conceived and bare him a son in those days. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him. And Terah called the name of his son that was born in him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days, and dignified him above all his princes that were with him. And it was in the night that Abram was born, that all the servants of Terah, and all the wise men of Nimrod, and his conjurers came, ate, and drank in the house of Terah, and they rejoiced with him all that night. And when all the wise men and conjurers went out from the house of Terah, they lifted up their eyes toward heaven that night to look at the stars, and they saw, behold, one very large star came from the east and ran in the heavens, and he swallowed up the 4 stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. And all the wise men of the king and his conjurers were astonished at the sight. And the sages understood his matter, that they knew its import. And they said to each other, this only betokens the child that has been born to Terah this night, who will grow up and be fruitful and multiply, and possess all the earth, he and his children forever, and he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands. And the wise men and conjurers went home that night, and in the morning of all these wise men and conjurers rose up early, and assembled in an appointed house. And they spoke and said to each other, behold, the sight that we saw last night is hidden from the king. It has not been made known to him. And should this thing get known to the king in the latter days, he will say to us, why have you concealed this matter from me? And then we shall all suffer death. Therefore now let us go and tell the king the sight which we saw, and the interpretation thereof, and we shall then remain clear. And they did so, and they all went to the king and bowed down to him to the ground. They said, May the king live. May the king live. We heard that a son was born to Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of thy hosts, and we yesternight came to his house, and we ate and drank and rejoiced with him that night. And when thy servants went out from the house of Terah to go to our respective homes to abide there for the night, we lifted up our eyes to the heaven, and we saw a great star coming from the east, and the same star ran with great speed, and it swallowed up the 4 great stars from the 4 sides of the heaven. And thy servants were astonished at the sight which we saw, and were greatly terrified. And we made our judgment upon the sight, and knew by our wisdom the proper interpretation thereof, that this thing applies to the child that is born to Terah, who will grow up and multiply greatly, and become powerful, and kill all the kings of the earth, and inherit all their lands, he and his seed forever. And now our Lord and King, behold, we have truly acquainted thee with what we have seen concerning this child. If it seemeth good to the king to give his father value for this child, we will slay him before he shall grow up and increase in the land.
When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people.
Haman was an astrologer, and when he was about to fix the time for the genocide of the Israelites, he first cast lots to determine which was the most auspicious day of the week for that purpose. Each day, however, proved to be under some influence favorable to the Israelites. He then sought to fix the month, but found that the same was true of each month. Thus Nisan was favorable to the Israelites because of the Passover sacrifice, Iyar because of the small Passover. But when he arrived at Adar, he found that his zodiacal sign was Pisces, and he said, Now I shall be able to swallow them as fish, which swallow one another.
In the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, the month of Nisan, they cast the pur, that is the lot, in the presence of Haman to select a day and a month. And the lot fell in the 12th month, the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, "There is a certain people dispersed and scattered among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom, whose customs are different from those of all other people, and who do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them."
A batch of declassified CIA documents have revealed the agency's dealing with the paranormal is now official. According to the secret files, the Central Intelligence Agency used a team of military-trained telepathic individuals during the Iran embassy siege nearly 40 years ago. The program, named Grill Flame, was established in 1975 and began as research into paranormal abilities. But its star turn came in 1979, when the telepaths were used to provide information on where the hostages were being held inside the embassy and the state of their health. And these are the pictures of the scene where the hostages were located, actually drawn up by the psychics based on their remote viewing abilities.
The CIA project, employing people who claim to have psychic powers, continued until 1995. 26,000 psychic missions were carried out by the CIA. 277 people who claimed to have psychic powers worked with the CIA, all at the expense of the American taxpayer. Up until now, this has been kept top secret.
20th centuries, Western culture has been overwhelmed by a fascination with spirit communication and paranormal phenomenon. Some of the most influential people in the modern era have been influenced themselves by New Age spiritism and the occult. Hillary Rodham Clinton, who supposedly contacted the ghost of Eleanor Roosevelt with New Age psychic Jean Dixon.
In recent years, Jean Dixon has turned increasingly toward astrology for help in seeing the future.
So eventually the president makes the decision, looked for a moonless night.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
It is known that Hollywood, believed by some to be under control of the Illuminati, has a habit of giving the public hints.
The deep state Illuminati New World Order has been subtly revealing the strategy of the hierarchy in many Hollywood films. Let's decode the esoteric allegory in the film Wanted.
We call this the loom of fate.
So the loom of fate is a concept that is not unique to the movie Wanted. It also appears in the TV show The Librarians and the video game God of War 2.
Every culture in history has a secret code, one you won't find in traditional texts.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. Gang stalking is spiritual warfare, and it's been going on since the beginning of time.
1,000 years ago, a clan of weavers discovered a mystical language hidden in the fabric. They called themselves the fraternity.
Personally, in terms of an individual, how they are selected.
You see that one thread that missed the weave and lies on top of the others?
Like a mistake?
No, it's a code.
Morgan Freeman's character is deciphering a binary code.
What does it say?
It's a name. A target. A clan of weavers discovered a mystical language hidden in the fabric. A target. Hidden in the fabric.
What is space? It is one of the deepest mysteries in physics. Could its elusive ingredients hold the key to the fate of the universe? The fabric of the cosmos.
So far, Einstein's theory of relativity, which describes space and time as a smooth fabric that's distorted or bent by massive objects, has been a spectacularly successful explanation of gravity and the large-scale behavior of the universe.
More interestingly, though, maybe there was something in the very fabric of space that was causing the higher energy particle to slow down.
And forms the very fabric of the cosmos. To Newton, space was the framework for everything that happens in the cosmos, the arena within which the drama of the universe plays out. In the space-time fabric.
Where do the names come from?
Come out of a necessity, Wesley. Necessity to maintain balance. They are orders that must be executed.
The Zodiac Killer has come to San Francisco.
Greek, Morse code, astrological signs. This guy's used them all.
I like killing people.
The Zodiac Killer, America's most infamous unidentified serial killer.
You want me to kill Robert Dean Darden?
Zodiac claims 37 victims.
Not me. Fate.
It's possible Zodiac is still out there.
A target.
So we have a secret society of assassins who kill based on a hidden code found in fabric. This is obviously a metaphor. Can you think of the last time your curtains had a hit list? Satan wants to establish a one-world government, but righteous men and women always stand in his way.
Newton saw space as passive. Einstein saw it as dynamic. It's interwoven with time and it dictates how things move. It's an actor and it plays a leading role in the cosmic drama.
Psalms 104:2, who covers thyself with light as with a garment, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain. So some secret societies attempt to use the information God placed in the stars to preemptively target their opposition before they become too powerful.
In the 1980s, the Defense Intelligence Agency began Project Stargate.
It was top secret, actually beyond top secret.
Dean Radin, a scientist, worked on the program that employed about a dozen psychics and mediums. For what?
For espionage.
To see whether someone in the United States could spy? Did it work?
It did work, yeah.
I was good at finding people. I was good at locating things.
Angela Ford was with Project Stargate for 9 years. She calls herself a medium. The Defense Department preferred remote viewer. In a sense, were you hired as a psychic spy?
Mm-hmm. I was called into session and my boss asked me, "Where is Charles Jordan?"
In 1989, Ford says she was able to psychically track down a former customs agent who had allegedly gone rogue.
I said, "The man is in Lowell, Wyoming."
Astrologer Joan Quigley was hired to read charts for one of the most powerful couples on Earth, and some people believed she changed history. It was Nancy Reagan who sought out Joan Quigley's advice after her husband was elected in 1980. Joan Quigley used astrology for every important event of Reagan's administration. One critical moment came up just after the defeat of Robert Burke as a Supreme Court justice. Hoping for a better fate, the timing of the next nominee was entrusted to the stars.
I did a chart for Anthony Kennedy to nominate him as a justice for the Supreme Court. It was an almost impossible day to find a really good time.
Joan Quigley interpreted the symbols on this zodiac chart to plot the perfect time when the planets would favor the new candidate.
It had to be so exact to the second. And someone was sitting in the audience with a stopwatch and gave a signal for the president to announce that he was nominating Anthony Kennedy for the Supreme Court.
I am today announcing my intention to nominate United States Circuit Judge Anthony Kennedy to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court.
One thing is certain, however. The leader of the free world ran his life and the country by consulting the stars. The careful guidance and timings of a White House astrologer. It wasn't the first time a world leader had consulted the stars.
The moon of fate.
Shortly after the Lincolns moved into the White House, they lost their 11-year-old son, Willie, to what was probably typhus fever. And the grief was too much for Mary Todd Lincoln, the First Lady. And she, as with hundreds of thousands of Americans, more or less converted. And she began to frequent spirit mediums, engage in seances, and she absolutely believed in the authenticity of contact with her departed son. There are historical records that attest to seances being held in the Lincoln White House.
No one was more fearful of a Lincoln defeat than his wife, now known by Lincoln staff as Her Satanic Majesty.
Historical records of a seance being held in the Lincoln White House appeared in the Boston Gazette. The president had a trance sitting in 1863, and he permitted a correspondent from the Boston Gazette to be present, subjecting his cabinet secretaries to advice about the war from this trance medium who was in touch at one point with the spirit of Henry Knox.
Acts 16, verse 16. And it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel, possessed the spirit of divination, met us, brought her masters much gain by soothsaying, fortune telling.
But the psychic with the most noteworthy gift of prophecy has been Jean Dixon. Since her early childhood, she's been able to foretell the events of the future. In recent years, she has astonished the public with her predictions of the assassinations of both Kennedys and Martin Luther King.
A clan of weavers discovered a mystical language hidden in the fabric. A target.
She is among the millions who believe that our destinies are interlocked with the movements of the planets, with the shifting of the stars.
Coming back from the dead. An eerie music video released features murdered rapper XXXTentacion attending his own funeral. The #1 trending video on YouTube shows XXXTentacion walking down a church aisle to an open casket where he sees his own body.
Standing in the steaming sun in a long, winding line didn't steer these fans away.
The wait was honestly worth it. Thank God we got to see him.
And once inside of the BB&T Center, mourners waited in another line for a chance to walk by the open casket of rapper XXXTentacion.
Oh, he still looked the same. He looked good. Everyone got a chance to see him and say their final goodbyes.
The fan memorial happening 9 days after the rapper was shot and killed in his car right outside of a Deerfield Beach motorcycle shop.
X got in his car, he drove around the parking lot, and he drove up to, we were waving at him, and he drove up to the stop sign, and then as soon as he got to the stop sign, about to make it right at the street, literally a black van, a black Dodge, pulled up in front of him. Two dudes with masks and guns got out of the car, and they're like, get the fuck out. So me and my buddy, we ran inside, and we were like, call 911, call 911. And I started screaming all in police. I was like, call 911. There's guys with guns outside. They're trying to kill X. Always we hear X go, what the fuck is going on? Pow, pow, pow. Shot X 3 times. Everybody ran back inside, waited for a minute, and then we all came back out and walked towards X's car, and he was dead. And the van drove away. Some sort of submachine gun they were holding. And they ran up to his car. And yeah, but that's basically what happened, guys. Just want to let you know.
You're like, what part of his body was shot?
He was shot in his neck.
How many times?
3 times. 3 shots.
Since his death, interest in his music has skyrocketed his songs to the top of the charts.
The rapper, who wrote and served as creative director for the video, leans over the casket in silence before his corpse reaches up and grabs him by the throat. The 20-year-old also spoke of his death in an Instagram video months before he was killed.
If I'm going to die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy.
Drake is set to drop a new album this June entitled Scorpion. The album seems to be an ode to his astrological sign, Scorpio, and that made us wonder, how well does Drizzy define his sign? So we've enlisted the help of astrologer Colin Bedell.
Astrology is having a real moment right now in contemporary pop culture because it's this really extraordinarily accurate tool to understand our personalities and our insight, our relationship to other people, and then our collective relationship to the universe at large.
We had Colin analyze Drake's lyrics from an astrologer's point of view to see just how many of Drake's songs match his Scorpio vibe. Scorpios can have somewhat of a religious streak.
They can see the physical material world, but they know there's a truth and a wisdom and something going on beyond it. The world we live in, we're constantly bombarded by all these different things, but a Scorpio is like, nope, I got laser vision, and it's called my success, and everybody here needs to get the out of my way.
All in all, Drake seems to be a textbook Scorpio, and his lyrics definitely show it. Although Scorpio season doesn't officially begin until October, the stars already seem to be aligning for Drake.
As a Scorpio, him releasing an album dedicated to the themes of Scorpio would make sense because the planet Jupiter, which rules expansion, abundance, success, joy, it can't but give good things to whatever it's involved in, is currently transiting Scorpio, where it will stay until November of this year. And the last time this happened was 11 and a half years ago.
The Blood Moon prophecy purports to reveal hidden messages.
News broke about rapper XXXTentacion, who was shot dead in Florida. And what I'm going to talk about in this video is how this happened by the numbers. So this is a lot of what we've been revealing, and this has to do with eclipse sacrifice. Let's talk about these two total solar eclipses that are creating an X over the United States of America. And these two eclipses are super significant. They create an X over the nation. But a lot of these rituals in the news, in the media, these celebrities being sacrificed, these are all happening in relation to the numbers of eclipses, and that's why I predicted something to happen today.
And then he ended up posting something saying, if anyone tries to kill me, it was at Champagne Poppy. I'm snitching right now.
Like, you tried to sacrifice me, bro. You tried to sacrifice me.
Drake's odd reference to X's murder on his new song Mob Ties with the line Louis bags in exchange for body bags. Recall X's Louis Vuitton bag was stolen from his car after he was killed.
He was shot in his neck.
How many times?
3 times. 3 shots.
Fans also are pointing out the lines on Drake's I'm Upset, in which he says SMS XXX, that's the only time I ever shoot below
the neck. Why you keep on shooting if you know that dude's dead? That's the only kind of shit that gets you so upset. Now Drake is known for doing double entendres and having clever wordplay and stuff. So a lot of people are looking at this line that says XXX. That's the only time I ever shoot below the neck.
And XXX is a reference to XXXTentacion. Also recall X feuded with Drake.
And they tried to sacrifice me. I hate.
Before his death, X apparently claimed on Instagram that Drake was out to kill him.
Tried to sacrifice me.
This all comes from the Bible, where Jesus died on the cross underneath a total solar eclipse.
The scriptures teach us that the sun, the moon, the stars were created by God and testify of his power, majesty, and his divine plan for the redemption of mankind. Many of God's children have been given discernment concerning the stars in the heavens. For instance, the 3 wise men observed the stars in service of their Creator. This is blessed. But Herod wanted to use the information from the stars to serve himself and to serve Satan. This is astrology. This is forbidden.
I'm a witch.
Whatever satisfaction you got in this particular spirit that you're consorting with now, eventually it's going to turn dark. Eventually it's going to turn on you. Because if it's not the Spirit of God, all other spirits turn on you. They come in, the Bible says that even Satan describes himself as a spirit of light. So for a long time you think that you're dealing with a nice spirit, and you're thinking you're dealing with a good spirit. And then over time, eventually what it wants is your soul, so it'll turn ugly on you. It'll start to try to control you.
A targeted individual.
But can a whole generation be targeted?
Chapter 3. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away, for of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with divers lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth.
These verses describe how generations in the last days will be. But how do they get that way?
You've heard of baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. But what about the next generation? Generation Z has arrived.
Generation Z are the Pluto and Sagittarius generation.
At 61 million strong, they're the second largest generation in American history. Only the baby boomers have them beat. By 2020, Gen Z will make up 1/3 of the US population. 67% agree being true to your values and beliefs makes a person cool. Only 48% identify as heterosexual. And 56% say they know someone who goes by gender-neutral pronouns. Generation Z is here, and they're 100% about to take over the world.
I taught for over 20 years. In 2016 year, that's when I was teaching pre-K, and our faculty was trained in the Welcoming Schools program. If you've never heard of it, it's an anti-bullying program that celebrates diversity and requires inclusivity by abolishing children's and teachers' biased notions of family and gender norms. Welcoming Schools claims that it is creating safe and supportive environments for all students, which is taught to students as young as 4 years old. It affirms same-sex marriage, parenting, gay and lesbian relationships, and transgenderism. And it's funded by the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBT political lobby organization in the US. And for the first time in 9 years at Odom, we would be spending 6 hours of training over a non-academic topic. And I asked them another question. I said, is there a letter to inform the parents? And they said, no, we haven't talked about that. And that was a real problem for me, because the families I served had come to see me an advocate for their children. As the pre-K through 5th grade teachers that we were being instructed to come up with a definition for the word homosexual that our students could understand. And we had to be able to explain it to our students and to say that gay love was beautiful. We were informed that our library would be filled with books like this one. This book is targeted toward early childhood up to 2nd grade. Okay? And so this book, Jacob's New Dress, is a book that celebrates a little boy that wants to wear dresses to school. This is another book. It's called It's Perfectly Normal. And this is a book, let me tell you what's in this book. This is an elementary school book. It's a graphically illustrated book, as you can see. It has promiscuity, homosexual exploration, sexual intercourse, street language, masturbation techniques, abortion as an escape from unwanted pregnancy, and this book is targeted for 9 and 10-year-olds. So these books would be specially marked on the shelves, and we were to encourage our students to check them out. And our principal, Ms. Sandra McWilliams, even told us, don't call the girls girls anymore, and don't call the boys boys anymore. So I knew something, of course, was very wrong. And she said this would make us an inclusive campus. Now I'm going to tell you an example of a training that I went to. And she said, I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation, the trainer said. She says, you're a teacher and you walk into the lounge, right? And the lounge is where you eat your lunch, right? She says, you walk into the lounge and there are 2 teachers sitting at the table over here having their lunch, and you overhear a conversation they're having, and one says to the other, oh, that's why Johnny has so many problems, because he has 2 moms. And so the trainer said, now I want you to think about that, and I want you to move around the room as I give you some options of what you can do. And she said, okay, now if you hear that conversation, what that person just said, and you want help, you want to know what to do, and you want an administrator's help, go stand over there by that tree. The second option B, she said, if you are going to go straight to that teacher and you're going to confront them about what they said about Johnny having 2 moms, then go stand over there at that tree. And then the third option was, if you're not going to do anything about it and you're just going to mind your own business, go over there to that side of the room. So can you imagine? I knew they were gauging our commitment to the program, and they wanted to see where we would stand on this. And I remember I couldn't betray my own conscience. I thought I could lie. I could do where I knew they were going to go, And for a split second, that's exactly what I thought, right? But I couldn't do it. So there I was, with 2 other people on that side of the room, looking at everybody else, and they looking at us. So I walked away from my teaching career of over 20 years, not knowing if I was ever going to be able to teach again. If you look at this map, we even mapped where these programs are in Austin, so we would strategically know what was going on. Why are they in these schools? Why are these not in other parts of Austin? Why have these schools been targeted? I had actually sent them emails to tell them about this situation and that I wanted to meet with them. So you know what they did? They profiled me at the door, because they have a camera. They profiled me at the door. And she says, "We know who you are." AISD does continue to do Pride Week.
Right.
It does continue to invite children to the city Pride Week. Have y'all seen what those look like? They tell teachers to invite children to go. They actually, this past year, took kids on buses.
I want to talk a little bit more about these forced, unannounced, warrantless home searches of people who have the audacity to take responsibility for their children and for their children's education. We call them homeschoolers. The government's about to call them criminals and put them under the microscope. Just turn your kids over to the government. They said in order to legally homeschool in the state of Maryland, parents would be required to allow a representative of the county board to observe instruction at the family's primary homeschooling location at least twice a year. So you're going to pay taxes for some bureaucrat to sit there and say, all right, show me how you teach. What happens when the government has a monopoly on the use of force, or when the government takes over the minds of young children rather than their parents who know them best and who love them? The government, as we've seen from the time of Plato, scheming as to how they could get rid of the family. That was a whole part of Plato, his analysis. I mean, he wanted to make sure that nobody knew who their parents were. That was a big part of Plato's Republic. You don't even know who your parents are. You'll be raised by the state. The state will be your mother and father, your security blanket. And you will do what they say. We will educate them so they are ours. And that's been the plan of every authoritarian dictator, every Marxist dictator since. Get them early, and you got them for the rest of their life. They point out lawmakers in the state of California are now pushing for families who homeschool their children to be subject to involuntary home visits from state employees.
Witnesses described it as brutal and vicious. A team of German police officers with a battering ram stormed the residence of the Wunderlich family, shown here at a homeschooling conference last year. The raid near Darmstadt last week took all 4 of the family's children into state custody. The only legal grounds were that the parents, Dirk and Petra Wunderlich, continued to homeschool their children. There were no other allegations of abuse or neglect. A German family court judge also authorized the police to use force against the Wunderlich children if they resisted. Behind the raid was the notorious Jugendamt, or youth office. Many of the German parents that have run afoul of the Jugendamt have had their lives ruined. They've been taken in and out of court, been fined thousands of euros, some have been thrown in jail, and some have lost their children. A few years ago, the Wunderlichs fled Germany to avoid having their children taken, but the need for employment forced them to return. In an interview in Berlin last year, Dirk Wunderlich said he was prepared to go to jail rather than send his children to school.
You can do what you want. My children don't go to school.
And it demonstrates why the asylum case of another German homeschool family, the Romaikas, is so important. The Romaikas fled German persecution of homeschoolers and were granted asylum by an immigration judge. The Obama administration wants the Romaikas sent back to Germany, where they could face the same fate as the Wunderlichs. Witnesses said when Petra Wunderlich tried to give her daughter a kiss and hug goodbye, one of the police officers pushed her away and said it's too late for that. The children were taken to unknown locations. Officials told the parents they would not be seeing their children anytime soon.
It'll leave the burden of proof on parents to prove that they are fit to be parents who can homeschool their kids. And so if this increase in government oversight becomes law, writes the Washington Examiner, it would reduce the valid legal option of homeschooling from a fundamental parental right to direct the education and the school choice of children, to compelled consent, to government intrusion upon the sanctity and privacy of the home and of school choice. Because we're going to have a full East German Stasi state here. As Eric Schmidt said, why are you concerned about this if you got nothing to hide, right? That's going to be the attitude. They say merely by filing an affidavit, they can register their homes as private schools, says the little Nazi lawmaker who says, this is not good enough. I mean, am I going to have to file an affidavit to have children in the first place? Am I going to have the permission of the state to become a parent? Where does this end? Where does this end?
I felt like the system was failing my children, and that's when I made the decision to homeschool.
Mother Kiari Harris was fed up. She says her 2 elementary school-aged children weren't excelling at their failing Buffalo public schools. So she filed these documents at Buffalo City Hall, informing the district of her intent to homeschool her children. According to the documents she provided to 7 Eyewitness News, they're dated December 7th, 2016, and the district says here it received her paperwork.
I spoke directly to the homeschool coordinator, and she told me that from this point on, my children were officially unenrolled from school.
But she says a week later, CPS called, wondering why her kids weren't in school.
I told them that my children were homeschooled now, and I said that I can furnish the documents if they need to see it.
Harris says she went on with her homeschooling, but then, less than a month later,
I was confronted by the CPS workers and the Buffalo Police Department, and they said, well, it's too late now to show these papers. The judge has already made the order. We have to take your children. But they never did show me the order. And so since they didn't show me the order, I said, well, I'm not just going to give you my children. And from that point, they arrested me and said that I was obstructing the court order.
Harris says she hasn't seen her 2 children in 3 weeks. They've been living in a foster care institution.
I'm just a mother whose children have been torn from her arms.
This homeschool parent is under attack.
Inside Erie County Family Court, a judge denying the request to reunite mother Kiari Harris and her 2 children after nearly 4 weeks apart, instead granting Harris 2 hours per week of supervised visitation.
The trauma and duress that these children are going through right now, not being with their mother, is unconscionable.
Harris's case is going national. The college-educated Buffalo parent says she tried to homeschool her children, but instead ended up in jail.
This can happen to anyone.
Parents are losing custody of their daughter because they oppose transgender medical treatments. Where'd she get the idea of having transgender medical treatments? Oh, that's right. They sent her to a school, and they didn't understand what the school was teaching their children. They said parents of a 17-year-old girl lost custody of their daughter for opposing her wish for transgender medical treatments. The judge has allowed the girl to be taken into custody of her grandparents, who do support the medical transition. The parents refused to consent to hormone treatments that were recommended by the 17-year-old girl's medical team. Where'd she get that medical team? Oh, that would be at the government school, I think. The parents argued their daughter was not even close to being able to make such a life-altering decision at this time. Transgender activists are referring to prescribing hormone and surgical treatments for a gender-confused child. How'd they get gender-confused? It's because the schools are teaching them, starting in kindergarten, about gender confusion. These are kids who haven't reached puberty. They don't understand anything. You think those inspectors coming into your home, wanting to know what you are teaching and how you're teaching, do you think they're going to have some say about your curriculum? Of course they will. I'm sorry, but I don't see anything in your curriculum that says something about the LGBTQ agenda here. You seem to be teaching these kids a very intolerant idea of marriage between one man and one woman. We can't have that. I think we're going to have to take your kids away.
John Quigley, what's an astrologer?
Oh, an astrologer is someone who plots the meaning of the map of the heavens that represents when a person or an idea or a country or a beginning is born. It's a map of the heavens for the time and place of birth.
It's the planet of revolutions and a radical new direction for the Vatican. Astrology behind the scenes in the Roman Catholic Church. The astrology chart of its birth. Actually, there are at least 3 critical astrological charts involved with the birth of the modern church.
So the Vatican Observatory has ties that go back several hundreds of years.
The Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope.
Inside the 2 domes perched atop the Papal Palace are the Vatican's telescopes. David Brown is a Jesuit priest and an astrophysicist. Now he is one of the stargazers for His Holiness. The observatory of Castel Gandolfo was dedicated by Pope Pius XI in 1935 and has been frequented regularly by the popes ever since. A photo of Pope John XXIII in the astrophysics laboratory. Pope Paul VI observed the moon as the first man set foot on it in July 1969. Modern telescopes were installed in the late 19th century. While the popes and the priests contemplated the heavens through the lens, the nuns charted them using photographic plates. Many of the researchers at the Specula Vaticana are Jesuit priests.
Wait till you find out about the Vatican astronomer saying he's operating with Project Lucifer.
Up on top of Mount Graham in Arizona, there's an observatory complex that consists of 3 very high-powered telescopes. One is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope. There's a radio telescope, and then there's one called the Large Binocular Telescope. This is the most powerful telescope in the world. Now, attached to this telescope is an infrared camera named Lucifer, which is really a kind of an odd name for a camera.
Franco had Catholic-run hospitals steal babies. In a lot of cases, nurses would secretly swap newborn babies with dead babies preserved in ice in order to fool the parents into thinking that the babies had suddenly died. It is estimated that as many as 300,000 babies had been stolen over the course of 5 decades. Surprisingly, Spain's Catholic Church continued the practice until 1987. The entire Catholic institution has been systematically covering up these cases all over the world in order to preserve their image. In February 2014, a report from UN's Geneva-based Committee on the Rights of the Child stated that the Holy See has consistently placed the preservation of the reputation of the Church and the protection of the perpetrators above children's best interests. But there's an even darker story to this. Dutch journalist Job Domen discovered the story of a young boy from a Catholic boarding school who in the 1950s was put into a psych ward ran by the church and forcibly castrated. At least 10 other similar cases of forced castration have been committed by the Dutch Catholic Church.
This is the Jesuit oath. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own, or any mental reservation whatever, even as a corpse or cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope. I furthermore promise and declare that I will make and wage relentless war, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate Protestants and liberals from the face of the whole earth. I will neither spare age, sex, or condition. I will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the wall, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race.
By the risen, resurrected power of Christ, to keep us safe. Keep us safe from Satan, evil people, and put a hedge around us.
Hallelujah. Praise Jesus. Glory be to the Most High God, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in the name of his Son, Jesus. Glory be to his name.
In the last days, all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution.
Being a targeted individual is something that it's two things. It's a blessing, and it's also it's very difficult to deal with.
It is when you think it is the darkest in your life, and you don't think God is anywhere near you, because you don't see any sun shining. His glory could be all around you.
Know that there's joy that comes in the morning, and there's joy even through the trial. Even through going through these types of things, you're supposed to always give praise to the Most High God and His Son Jesus, because He considered us worthy to go through these things. He said that His people we shall have to go through trials. He said that He's the master and we're the servant. He says that is the servant above the master. If He went through, if they hated Him, are they not going to hate us?
Did you know that when Christ died on the cross at Calvary, it was pitch dark?
Christ prophesied that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in these last days, just before His return. Luke 17, verse 26.
Sometimes when it gets the darkest.
Does God not wait for us?
Well, that's the thing about God. That's what I love about Him. Oh, I love Him.
We love the Lord. O thou that changest not.
If you just simply look for who it's for.
Abide with me.
And it's for you if you want the glory of God.
Eyes have not seen.
Amen.
Oh, lift up thy prayer.
Ears have not heard.
For the remnant that is left.
Do you want to break God's commandments? Of course you don't. If you want to live for the Lord, you don't. But what if you do break one of them? When that law is broken, and it will be broken, what do, preacher? You plead the blood of one who is far more righteous than you are. And you plead His righteousness to a holy God. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Believe, receive.
I say all praise to you, Father, in the name of your Son Jesus. I give you all praise.
Glory to God.
I pray for our people in the house, and those who are watching this thing now, those who will watch it later. I pray for them.
God, we need you now.
My people,
cover ourselves in the blood of Jesus.
which are called
if God be for
we ask you to forgive
by
us,
my
oh God,
name,
of all of our sins, oh God.
Who can
Father,
be against
please
you?
cleanse us.
I'm going to breathe and breathe. Then He's going to tell me when to stop. He's going to call my soul home.
shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins, and I will heal their land.
And I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for watching. We hope you found this video informative. My husband and I started this channel to share the good news of salvation found in Jesus Christ and to expose the satanic hidden agendas in today's society. As many of you may know, YouTube has been demonetizing and suppressing videos that go against the mainstream's indoctrination. We want to continue as a couple rooted in Christ to share the knowledge and truth that we have gathered to all our brothers and sisters in Christ and to those seeking to find Him. Currently, my husband and I have been working in our spare time to create these videos, and we believe that with extra time, we can create even more powerful and exciting content that could be shared to help bring people to the truth. Help us continue to expose the truth and spread the word of God by supporting us on Patreon or by submitting a one-time donation via PayPal. We truly appreciate all our Patreon supporters and the PayPal donations we have received so far, as well as our subscribers who have purchased t-shirts from our shop Apparel Dime, which feature faith-based t-shirts for men, women, and children. If you would like to support us, the links are in the description below. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.